Greetings, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a subject to you that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And that subject is justice. Not just justice, there's going to be special emphasis in this short video about something connected to it. Why is justice important, and what happens when it is absent or insufficient, denied altogether, or wrongly set up or implemented? What is justice, first of all? I like to give my own definition just so people watching the video know what I'm talking about specifically, because words can have multiple meanings. Justice in this case means rectifying something that was unfair, something that was unfair enough that it requires or calls for rectification, some kind of stepping in of an authority or system to correct something that may not have been proper. So what happens when justice is denied, like on a large scale, starting at the top, if you will? It's arguable that justice is a public service that cannot really be denied, or else there's upheaval. Historically speaking, there always is. And if you look at history, and I'm no history expert or professor, but I do know certain stories very well. And it seems like every time there is upheaval or revolution, immediately preceding it, there's kind of a widespread denial of justice to the people, and it tends to be the final straw. One might argue that people require justice as a service from any kind of government or authority, and at the very least, it needs to exist in some form or another in order for there to be an expectation of permanency. So when is it called for? This is going to be a short video, like I said, but when is justice called for? Well, not every chance that not every complaint obviously calls for justice or official authoritarian justice that, from a system or a court, so to speak. But beyond a point when there's damages, and our courts in this part of the world, in Californian courts or American courts, we draw a line between small claims and criminal courts. We have categories, obviously, of justice. We have petty crimes, so to speak, and we have more serious crimes, and we've got labels and symbols for all this stuff. But really, not every complaint calls for official justice. It doesn't. So there's things that call for just being patient with people, being tolerant, because people make mistakes, they learn. There's a process of learning that involves establishing boundaries, finding boundaries, and respecting boundaries, hopefully, eventually. But that process, the learning process, when there's not a great deal of harm or no harm whatsoever, justice isn't really called for. But beyond that, it is. If something is, damaged that is substantial enough, and where that line is drawn is it can be up to the court or a judge, an arbitrator, a moderator, a mediator. There's a lot of words for it, but a third party, basically, somebody who is supposedly neutral, unbiased, and objective enough so that they can look at the situation and the evidence and make a decision about whether or not something is called for in terms of action or restitution. And when that's unavailable, when appeals are denied, when there is no opportunity for justice, or it is flat out denied when it is called for in a very legitimate and real way, well, there are only so many of those instances that can slip by before they get noticed. We have something called civil rights in America. It's a big conversation. That's a whole separate video, but in the last 100 years, there's been a great deal of progress towards establishing and enforcing civil rights and making it part of the community and the workplace and the courtrooms. It has actually happened in a big way for a lot of people, and at this point in time, it's not happening as much as it has been. And what I'm trying to say is it's going backwards, and I don't think that I'm out of line saying that. I think it's pretty obvious to a lot of people right now. The courts are going backwards with their efficacy. their actual justice that they're serving. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not going to do a deep dive into the reasons in this video, but the bottom line, to get back to the subject, is that when justice is denied, and when it is denied enough for enough people, people get upset. For lack of a better way to say it, they get really upset. It's almost like that energy has to go somewhere, and it finds an outlet eventually, on an individual level and on a community level. So I don't know if there's any people connected with our justice system watching this video. You might consider the effects of automating it, replacing due process with symbolism. You may know what that means. Relying on books and rules instead of judgment and actual due process and investigation, ultimately defeating fairness. There are always responses to that. On a long enough timeline, there will be a response. So if you have questions or comments, this is a subject of special interest for me, and I love to talk about it. Reach out to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you. Have a great day.